My Hero Academia is the anime that got me into anime. I remember being one of those judgmental assholes thinking that anime was cringe and degenerate, but as soon as my brother convinced me to watch a few episodes, I quickly realized that it was my type of cringe and degenerate. And I've been a total weeb and Eren Yeager simp ever since. Unfortunately, like any art, My Hero has its flaws. And I think its number one biggest flaw, aside from this stupid great baby, is its main character, Midoriya. And before we get into it, guys, if you like my content, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. It really helps out a lot. I'm caught up to the manga, although I won't discuss it in this video. I'll only be covering events from the anime, although I think the overall message still applies to what happened in the manga. Now, I don't hate all of Deku's character. There's some parts of it that I really like. I like that he's a nervous kid and is kind of awkward. I like that he idolizes All Might, and honestly, I think that's the strongest part of his character. Other than that, though, the problem with Midoriya is that he's a basic bitch. This guy is the Patagonia or pumpkin spice latte of anime MCs. It's like Horikoshi was playing Build-A-Bear with anime MCs and was like, strangely colored hair? Check. Kindness and determination? Check. Chosen one trope? Check. And he decided that that was enough. Forget character development. Forget learning about the world around you or reflecting on society in any meaningful way. Deku's biggest realization in the show is that he has legs, that he can kick things instead of just punching them. I wanted to take a closer look at Deku's character, try to see what the author was going for and see where he went wrong in my eyes. If you like Deku and think I'm dumber than an electrified Kaminari for having this opinion, let me know in the comments, but until then, here goes. So there's a common idea among writers that characters are interesting when there's some sort of paradox about them, something that can be encapsulated by the phrase, they're X but also Y. Why do we like Bakugo? Because he wants to be a hero, but his personality is more like a villain's. Why is Todoroki so interesting? Because he is a father who's the number 2 hero, but who he hates with all his heart. The same applies for other popular anime protagonists. We like Lelouch from Code Geass because he's both ruthless to his enemies and incredibly kind-hearted towards his sister. We like L because he's a genius detective but also a freaking weirdo. At the start of this series, Deku has this too. He's a wannabe hero who has no shot at his dream because he's quirkless. But his lack of a quirk doesn't matter to him. He keeps his little notebook on superheroes anyway, rushes in to save Bakugo anyway, and wants to apply to UA anyway. I was convinced after this that Deku was going to become anime Batman, someone who uses his intelligence and knowledge of quirks and superhuman society to fight crime despite having no powers of his own. And I was so hyped. But instead, All Might fell from heaven and gave him a quirk, and with that, we lost what was interesting about Deku's character. Now, it's not about a boy without a quirk trying to do the impossible. Instead, it's about a kid trying to control his power. Not terrible, but not something unique at all. There are 1,012 anime about trying to control power. Demon Slayer, Black Clover, Naruto, 7 Deadly Sins, and so many more. You need a human element in addition to that. And Deku, for so much of the series, unfortunately lacks that human element. Brandon Sanderson, one of the greatest fantasy authors ever, thinks that there are 3 sliding scales of character. These are proactivity, or how intentional the character is about their goals, likability, and competence. He says that if you want an interesting character arc, have the character move up or down on one or more of these sliding scales. So, for example, a character like Endeavor, who starts out very high on competence and proactivity in reaching his goals, but low on likability, could move up on likability by trying to make amends for his previous shortcomings. A character like All Might, who's high in all 3, might have a character arc where he decreases in competence following his power down. Deku is already plenty likable, and his competence as soon as he masters full cowling is pretty apparent. He can definitely get even stronger, but now that he's one of the most promising young heroes, it's not quite as interesting to watch him grow. Deku's only real goal ever is wanting to save people and become a hero that smiles. Yeah, that's cool, and we want to see him achieve that goal. But it's also very one-note. We don't get a real reason for Deku wanting to pursue this, except for that he thinks All Might is very cool. This kind of goal isn't anything new or special. After Naruto, we saw an influx of anime where the main character wanted to achieve something amazing. Asta wants to be Wizard King, Takemichi wants to be the #1 delinquent, Hinata wants to be a great volleyball player. But each of those is tied to something fundamentally human. Asta wants to be Wizard King so he can eradicate classism. Takemichi wants to be the #1 delinquent so he can save his girlfriend. Hinata wants to be a great volleyball player so he can beat Kageyama. And of course, Naruto wants to be Hokage so the village will recognize him and he won't be alone anymore. Deku, unfortunately, just has none of that. There's no reason, no human reason, he wants to become a hero beyond just being a good guy. This is okay for the first episode or even the first few episodes before Deku can control his powers. But once he reaches a certain level of competence, his arc just isn't interesting anymore because he's not actually moving on any of the sliding scales. There are ways to do character arcs that don't revolve around becoming more powerful. In My Hero, we have Eri breaking out of her shell, we have Ida becoming a better hero, we have Endeavor treating his family better. But Deku doesn't really have problems. From the beginning, he's a nice, likable, heroic kid, which means he doesn't have much room to grow except in his power level. This is also why I'm not the biggest fan of Tanjiro from Demon Slayer, but that's for another video. And even when it comes to power, there's a serious problem. The power that Deku gets isn't a normal superpower that could be good with training, like Lemillion's. It's the quirk of the #1 hero. There's absolutely zero mystery regarding how he's going to get his top spot, because someone in his shoes already did. And in Deku's case, someone with less latent potential did, because we know that One For All gets stronger with each successive user. Everything we see All Might do is something that we know Deku will be able to do one day, and that kind of sucks the fun and mystery out of it. And that's only compounded when Deku unlocks quirks within All For One that All Might never had. Then there's also the problem of messaging and theme. My Hero Academia in the first few episodes seems to be saying something along the lines of anyone can be a hero. But this isn't true because not everyone is going to get powers from anime Superman. Even if Deku did get powers from All Might, this could have been remedied by having him also be insightful when he fights or use gadgets in an interesting way. Maybe at the beginning of the series he could be trying for the hero support course instead of the main hero course. Also, random thought, does anyone else find it interesting that All Might is a jacked rabbit-shaped pro-hero when we also have Mirko? To quote a supervillain far superior to any in My Hero, if I had a nickel for every time Horikoshi drew a buff, overpowered, rabbit-looking hero, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Horikoshi, you got a fetish or something? Anyway, sorry, where was I? Oh yeah, realism. Deku isn't realistic at all about his goals and gets extremely, extremely lucky that he was in the right place at the right time. Because he's so unrealistic, he doesn't actually engage with the flaws of hero society in any meaningful way. MHA says in the beginning that a whole 1/5 of the population is quirkless. Why don't we talk about those people at all? Deku definitely should have cared about their plight. So, with all of this said, how might we fix Deku? I think what needed to happen was that Midoriya needed to interact with superhero society more. This might sound like a weird statement given that he's in training to become a hero, but hear me out. Hero society is not all sunshine and rainbows. The anime kind of hints at this, but manga readers especially know that superheroes do pretty messed up things sometimes. Don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's clear that people who otherwise might have been good people, like Twice for example, become villains for reasons that could have been avoided. Even Shigaraki probably could have been saved as a kid if the right people nurtured him. But there's no infrastructure made to rehabilitate people. and nothing that could help people with threatening or maladaptive quirks actually integrate into society. This is how radicalization happens in real life too. People who are shamed and cast outside by society tend to rebel against that society. A child unloved by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And I think that in general, the whole villain philosophy thing could have been expounded upon in much greater detail. I like Shigaraki's nihilism and the idea that he just wants to destroy everything. However, I think a lot more could have been done with the rest of the villains, especially in the way they interact with Deku. Don't get me wrong, I love Toga, and Twice, and especially Dabi. But I think the way you fix Deku and make his character arc interesting is to contrast his optimistic naivete with the harsh realities of the world. For example, what if there was a villain who was quirkless and bullied by people with quirks who went crazy one day and became a villain? Like Deku could have. What if there was someone who became a villain after he got hurt by collateral damage from a hero? Or someone that was ignored by a hero, ignored by one of those fake heroes that Stain hated in their time of need. These aren't fully formed ideas by any means, but I would have loved for Deku to just engage in the flaws of hero society a little more. No, scratch that. A lot more. One anime that does this super well is Naruto following the Pain arc. No spoilers, but Naruto realizing what's wrong with the world during that arc propels him to become a wiser, more proactive, and better character. Sure, that happens after a million episodes, but it could have happened earlier, and it should have happened to Deku by now. The other possibility is that Deku could actually take a step back in terms of power. Maybe he loses his quirk somehow, or he actually listens to Recovery Girl when she says to stop overdoing it. Whatever the reason, force him to find a way to fight without using One for All, and then have him take those lessons with him when he eventually gets it back. Have him actually become anime Batman, and use only his smarts to get ahead. One anime that did this really well was Black Clover, where Asta was temporarily depowered, and Deku would have benefited from something similar. We actually do see a little of this for just an episode or two during the summer training camp arc, and this is one of my favorite moments for Deku's character, where he uses his brains to lure Tokoyami and Dark Shadow towards Moonfish, the villain that was attacking Bakugo and Todoroki, and he solves two problems in one go. This was great stuff, and I would have loved to see more of it. But even with those fluctuations of power, I still think it's important to have that human element. Deku needs a reason to want to be a hero aside from his own ego. Maybe if there was someone specific he wanted to protect or failed at protecting, that could give him the incentive to save everyone. Feeling powerless is a really good motivator. Or maybe he could want to become a hero to reform superhuman society. All Might was the symbol of peace, but as soon as he's gone, that peace becomes incredibly precarious. Maybe Midoriya realizes that the way to lasting peace isn't a singular symbol, but societal overhaul. And that would be great for him and All Might's relationship too, where instead of blindly idolizing his mentor, Midoriya could actually take stock in his failures as well as his successes. And furthermore, I would have loved to see Deku actually make strides towards that goal regardless of his powers. Aim for the hero support course, or something. Anything that doesn't make his aspirations seem wildly unrealistic, because for most of his life, they were. I really like My Hero Academia. Its world building and villains and action are all really cool. But in my opinion, Deku is kind of lame, and that sucks. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel out a lot. I make Avatar and anime content twice a week, analytical but also kind of lighthearted, so yeah, come through, have a good time, it's free, so